Before Charles Dickens became one of the greatest writers in the English language, he was a hungry 12-year-old boy. He worked in a dirty factory and put labels on shoe polish bottles while his father was in prison. But that dark room did not destroy him. It created the voice that the world would never forget. At that time, he was not famous. He was not standing before crowds, and he was not writing books to change the world. He was only a thin and ashamed child, doing the same small task again and again. One bottle, one label. Another bottle, another label. He worked 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. Only a short time earlier, this boy lived inside stories. He loved adventure, imagination, and books that carried him far away from ordinary life. But now his world became smaller than a page. It became a factory table, a dirty window, and the painful feeling of being forgotten. This was not only the beginning of a writer's life, but it was also the beginning of an important question. How does a child survive when the people who should protect him cannot? How does shame become memory, and how does memory become powerful language? Charles Dickens did not begin with comfort. He began with a wound. Before that wound appeared, and before the factory took the light from his childhood, Charles knew a softer world. He was born in 1812 in Portsmouth, a city near the sea on the southern coast of England. His father, John Dickens, worked as a clerk in the Navy Pay Office, keeping records and handling papers. His mother, Elizabeth, was lively, warm, and full of energy. The family was not rich, but for a time they were comfortable enough to believe that life was moving in the right direction. Some of Charles's happiest memories came from Chatham, a town near the sea. There were green fields, fresh air, quiet roads, and an old castle that seemed perfect for a child's imagination. To a boy like Charles, the world did not feel small there. It felt open, and books made it even larger. He read adventure stories and fairy tales like Robinson Crusoe and the Arabian Nights. Every page became a door, and every sentence carried him somewhere beyond ordinary life. When he read, he was not only a child in a modest English home, he was a traveler, a survivor, a dreamer, and a boy learning that words could build whole worlds. His father encouraged that love of stories. On walks, John Dickens pointed out people in the street and told stories about them. Charles watched closely. He noticed a torn coat, a nervous laugh, a tired face, or a strange voice. Even as a child, he was learning to see what many people ignored. Before a writer speaks, a writer must see. Near Chatham stood Gad's Hill Place, a beautiful house on a hill. His father told him that if he worked hard, one day he might own such a house. The boy remembered that promise. A house on a hill became a dream waiting in the distance. For a child, a promise like that can become a secret place inside the heart. Charles did not yet understand social class, debt, or the hard walls that money could build around a family. But he understood desire. He understood the feeling of looking at something beautiful from far away, wondering if life might one day open its gate. That house was not only a building, it was safety, dignity, and proof that a boy from an ordinary family could rise higher than the road beneath his feet.
But the dream of that house was still far away. Before Charles could climb toward it, his family began to fall. John Dickens had a weakness that many families understand too well. He spent more money than he earned. At first, perhaps it looked manageable, a little more comfort, a little more pride, and a little more hope borrowed from tomorrow. But debt has a quiet way of growing in the dark. One day it is only a worry, and then it becomes a wall. In 1824, when Charles was 12 years old, that wall closed around the family. John Dickens could not pay what he owed. In the England of that time, debt could send a man to prison. He was taken to the Marshalsea, a debtor's prison in London. His wife and younger children went to live with him there, as families sometimes did. But Charles was not taken with them. Charles was sent to work. He entered Warren's blacking factory, a place that made shoe polish. There, the boy who had once traveled through books sat at a small table and placed labels on bottles. He worked 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, for 6 shillings a week. A child's imagination was not broken by one dramatic moment, it was worn down by repetition. Bottle after bottle, hour after hour, the same movement, the same smell, and the same shame. Charles felt abandoned. He felt that the people who should have protected him had left him alone in a world too heavy for a child. Later, he would ask how his parents could have allowed it. That question never truly left him. After work, London kept teaching him. He walked through streets where wealth and misery stood almost side by side. Beautiful carriages passed children sleeping near doorways. Grand houses rose near mud, smoke, hunger, and noise. There were prisons, workhouses, beggars, market sellers, tired workers, and fog so thick it seemed to hide the city from itself. Here, Dickens learned something no school could teach him. Poverty was not just a word. It had faces, it had voices, and it had small hands doing adult work. London wounded him, but London also filled him with stories. Those stories were not clean or easy. They came from corners where polite society did not like to look. They came from children with empty stomachs, from workers with tired bodies, from mothers counting coins, from men afraid of prison, and from streets where one person's comfort could pass right beside another person's hunger. Dickens did not need someone to explain inequality to him in a classroom. He had walked through it, he had smelled it in the air, and he had felt it in his own shame. That is why, years later, his poor characters did not feel like decorations in a novel. They felt alive because they came from a world he had known with his own eyes. When those stories finally found their way out of him, they did not come out as cold ideas, but as living voices. After his father left prison, Charles returned to school. But the boy who came back was not the same boy who had left. The factory remained inside him like a locked room. He did not speak of it openly. He carried it quietly, the way some people carry a pain that cannot explain. As he grew older, he began working as a clerk in a law office. The law gave him papers, rules, and offices, but it did not give him the life he wanted. So Charles taught himself shorthand, a fast way of writing with symbols. That skill opened another door. He became a reporter. Dickens had seen poverty from below. As a reporter, he began to see power from inside its own rooms. He covered debates in the British Parliament, listened to speeches, and followed elections and political events. He watched how laws were argued, how public men spoke, and how words could defend people, hide truth, or shape a country.
His writing became quick, sharp, and full of energy. Then, in 1833, one of his short stories was published in a magazine. For Charles, seeing his words in print was not a small thing. It was proof that the boy from the factory had not disappeared. More stories followed. In 1836, when he was only 24, Dickens published the Pickwick Papers in monthly parts. Readers waited for each new chapter, almost the way people today wait for the next episode of a favorite show. Suddenly, his name was everywhere. Fame arrived, but that same year he married Catherine Hogarth. A large family would follow, and with it came heavy responsibility. So Dickens wrote with almost unbelievable speed. But what made him different was not only how much he wrote, it was who he chose to see. In Oliver Twist, he gave a poor orphan a voice. In A Christmas Carol, he turned a greedy man's cold heart into a lesson about kindness. In David Copperfield, he returned to the pain of childhood. In Great Expectations, he explored the dream of rising above one's birth. And in A Tale of Two Cities, he placed private lives inside the fire of revolution. Dickens did not write only to entertain. He made readers look at the people society often passed by. This was the quiet power of Dickens.
He understood that many people could ignore a statistic, but they could not easily ignore a child with a name, a face, and a trembling voice. A report might say that poverty existed, but a novel could make poverty sit beside the reader at the table. It could make hunger speak, and it could make a cold room feel close. Dickens turned social problems into human beings. That changed the emotional distance between comfortable readers and suffering lives. He did not ask people only to understand. He made them feel responsible for seeing. And once they looked, they could not easily forget. But fame did not make Dickens rest, because the same fire that made people remember the forgotten also kept burning inside him. He became more than a novelist. He became a performer. He stood before large audiences and read his stories aloud. But he did not read them like a tired man reading from a page. He became the people he had created. His voice changed, his face changed, and he whispered, shouted, laughed, and broke hearts in the same evening. Crowds came to see him across England and later in America. For many listeners, it felt as if the characters had walked out of the books and entered the room.
Then came one of the quietest, most emotional turns in his life. In 1856, Dickens bought Gad's Hill Place, the house he had admired as a boy near Chatham. The child who once looked up at that house from the road had finally reached it. Success was not only money or fame, it was the return of a childhood promise. But the body has limits, even when ambition refuses to stop. Dickens wrote, edited magazines, gave speeches, organized charity work, traveled and performed until his health weakened. Friends and doctors urged him to rest, but he kept going, as if silence itself frightened him. In 1870, at Gad's Hill Place, Charles Dickens suffered a stroke. He died the next day, June 9th, at the age of 58. He wanted a simple funeral, yet he was buried in Westminster Abbey. For days, ordinary people came with flowers. That detail matters. The people he had written for came to say goodbye. Charles Dickens began in a dark room of shame, but he carried words like a small candle. With that candle, he helped the world see the poor, the hungry, and the invisible. His life reminds us that a painful beginning does not have to become the final chapter. He was once a lonely child in a factory, tired and almost unseen. But he did not let that darkness become silence. He watched, he remembered, and he learned the faces of poverty, the sound of hunger, and the sadness of children who had no voice. Years later, he turned those memories into stories that made people feel, think, and care. That is the deep lesson of his life. Pain can become wisdom when it is carried with honesty, and words can become light when they are used with kindness. In life, no one can control every hardship, but every difficult season can teach a person to see more deeply, listen more carefully, and speak with more compassion. If you enjoyed this story and want to improve your English every day, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new lesson. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.